Oh, we got some natural wedge piece of cherry. Does have a little bit of flaw in it. Does have a crack coming across. The reason it was covered with plastic, these logs have been around for a long time, but as soon as you cut these things, well, I have one, actually I had a different one that I was going to do today, and I did not put the plastic over it, and it immediately started to crack, even though these have been around for years. But we'll work through the crack. It does go quite a ways up, so it may end up staying there. My process for doing the natural edge stuff is I want to get them in balance. So I'm going to pick on the two high points of this one. And actually, I put it on there actually pretty good. We're out about 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to, my tailstock does not have the, or yeah, my live center does not have the point end. It's a one-way style live center. So I can easily move it over 1/16 of an inch if I need to. So I'll go back and check it. And we moved it the wrong way, as usual. So it's just a matter of moving it around, and then we'll make a cut, and then we'll check it again, and then we'll get because normally on most natural edge stuff, you're going to have 2 low points, 2 high points. I try and make them even as best as what I can. It's just, it makes it easier. I think Lyle Jameson talked about that at one point. That's where I sort of come up with that. And it does work. It does make life a whole lot easier. Because then you're not fighting with the out of balance part. Because that's the bottom line is the quicker it can spin, the better it is. At least to your comfort level, put it that way. So just what I did, I actually spun it a little bit ago, and I was not able to get hardly any RPMs out of it. I am out of the line of fire. I straddle my leg on my lathe. So I'm going to come in from the top. We're going to pretend this thing has actually bark on it. If it did have bark on it, you want to come in from the top, at least to get started. So that the bark doesn't yank right off. And we'll go at the speed at whatever the lathe at. You're going to be at that speed as far as cutting progression goes. If you notice the thing's not bouncing, it's not jumping around. If I try to go too fast or take too big of a cut, it's going to want to bounce.
Kurt, your audio is coming in kind of muffled.
Kind of muffled. That's the noise cancellation part. I'll try and talk less when I'm cutting.
Sound better there.
We'll stop and take a look and see where we're around there. Or actually look like I did actually a pretty good job, but I didn't cut there because them little things are not there. So I'm going to check it again on the 2 high points, and we're pretty good there. Let's see what we're at on the low points. We're off considerably on the 2 low points. So that means we need to move that low point in that direction a little bit, about 1/8 of an inch. And remember, everything's compounded by 2 when you're doing that. And there's nothing says that once we flatten off the bottom and start making a shape out of it, we can still move it because we're not locked into anything. I see a lot of people put base plates, or the worst one I see is people use a worm screw in this situation. And as far as I'm concerned, that's not a practice I would do. And the sort of takes on a little bit as a go, not a lot. You know, more so just a bridge curve up, but you know, to get kind of a big cut out there at the end because I moved it. If I slow down and let it cut, you don't get any bumping, bouncing. So everything is nice and round, should be. Let's see whether I moved it in the right direction. Not really enough. I think we're gonna have to take more off once we start making the shape here because of these cracks. Well, let's move it one more time. Let's see if it takes. I'll take less off of there, or I moved it in the wrong direction. More off the other side. So this way, it's one more cut going in this direction, and then we'll deal with it from the bottom up. Because like I say, we're not locked into anything until we get a tenant or anything like that on it. That's completely off the end. There's our lovely cracks. Now we're right where we want to be. Our two high points are pretty much in line with one another. Our two low points are in line with one another. That means once we get this back part taken down some, then we'll be able to spin it at whatever speed you're comfortable spinning it at. So we'll go in from the back. And we can change the view of the blue line. So we'll do the double view. You can see the top and the back. And then we're going to flatten out the back. And just by what I did, I was able to gain actually a couple hundred RPM easily. It's just a simple pull cut, as somebody would call it. Most people would call it. Left foot forward, right foot back, shoulder against my hip. All I'm doing is rocking back and forth with my butt. The problem with this cut is you do need to kill. The right direction, that's in your foot. Always helps when it's for us. It's cut. Well, I have a little bit left on the outside edge, but that doesn't really matter. Not very flat in at the center. I'll flatten that out just a little bit because that's where our tenant's going to go. Now we need to know which tenant we're going to use. We started at 9. We'll go to the bigger one. Because we'll probably want about 3 inches. Use dividers. These are set for my chuck. Subscribing with the left leg and eyeball on the right leg. Do not let the right leg touch. You only do that once or twice, because you will be chasing those calibers. And hopefully it doesn't catch you on the way by. It's pretty violent. I will say that much. So now we know where our, basically where our, sort of where our foot's gonna be. So now I'm gonna go out and get rid of the corner. Is mine next step. I still actually don't have that totally true right there at the center, but on the outside, or the bottom edge here. This doesn't really matter. And we were gonna be a good boy and turn lathe off to move the tool rest. Definitely a good idea when you're doing anything in the natural edge category. And to do so, because those edges will hurt. If I make a straight line for quite a while, and I'm rattling stuff for sure. But this is probably too deep, in my opinion, for the natural edge. One of them professional turners talked about that at one point, and their opinion is that it should never be more than 50% of the diameter of the piece. And I've sort of stuck with that, because if you get them deeper, it's a little bit harder to get a good shape on. These guys think. We're getting closer to the top. And we know we need a tenon in there. And it's sort of, that cut right there, sort of, it's basically an unsupported cut. So it's not going to be a clean cut, but it's a very quick removal of material. Like I said, this is probably is too deep. I was using a 5/8 gouge just to make things go along a little easier, a little quicker. And I'll switch over to a 1/2 inch gouge because it will allow me to make a tighter curve in here than the 5/8 will. And pretty much I'm trying to look up at the horizon as I'm cutting. Like I said, it's a little too deep. Now we've made it the whole way to the rims. There's a crack. It's a wormhole and a crack. I don't know that I could get rid of. Cracks in this stuff actually usually go pretty deep. So that's probably going to be a little design opportunity at some point, is what I would
Looking
say.
good.
One of the things that we can use, the cheapest tool you'll ever buy for your wood turning, is a simple hot melt glue stick. And this was Troy Grimwood, I think was his name. He's from over across the pond, and he talked about using one of them, and it'll show you very quickly what your curve looks like. And also show you where any of the lumps and bumps and all that good stuff is at. And to me, it still looks like it's too much of a straight up shot. So we're going to take it down some more. I don't hesitate to waste the wood. I would rather end up with a piece that is more appealing, at least more appealing to me. But now our curve is much more tucked into the bottom. We still have about a 3-inch foot. So that's more than enough for a foot. So if we clean it up, you can see what it looks like. Always tendency to reach up and touch that, and it's not. You only do it a couple times, because it'll come back and bite you. That maybe that could actually be a little bit smaller. I'm gonna mark the other side's tenon on it. I think that's where we're gonna go. Tenon wise. So that I can make this curve come down farther up. That's me, that's more where I wanna be. So if we still want a foot out here somewhere, we take a little bit more, leave a half-decent size foot. Maybe put a little bead or something on there. We'll get our shape more to what we want it to be. And I can come back and do a bevel to 40 cut, so there's no complaining. If you don't want to sand it out. Now we have a pretty much a nice clean surface. Like I say, we'll have to deal with those little cracks there. Or we could just reduce the diameter. I might just do that. It's like cherry's weird when it comes to that. It's like a grain separation rather than more of a crack. But I can show those from there. Now, of course, we can't grab a tenant out there, right? The majority of that. Couple ways we can make our tenon. I have a couple of different ways that I can do it, put it that way. I actually have a parting tool. That one demonstration they were talking about, or they were talking, there's another piece of Amazon steel. It's just a high-speed steel blank. It is, I can read it, 8 by 8 by 200, which would be in millimeters. So it's about 3/8 inch. So it makes a nice little 3/8 inch parting tool, just around the ends or the corners over so it fits in a color or even glue it into something. Has a very short handle one because I don't, not used for anything leverage wise, so I don't need a big fat handle. But it's also grounded at an angle, which is going to match the dovetail drive. Now when I go into that corner, now I have a nice, clean, crisp way to grip up over it. Now we can think about one last little bit in there before we move on. I'll pull that back down a little bit. And I don't know why, but I sort of like the beads. Put a bead in there. I'm going to go in from both sides. This is a spindle guide. This is a 1/2 inch spindle guide. If I go into that corner, you got to watch because you're really going against the grain when you go into that corner. And just lift the hand, drop the handle, and roll it over. Come back to the outside, drop the handle. Basically like a slicing type of a cut. It gives you very, very nice fine shavings. The only downfall of it, some woods it can tear up in there, which it did a little bit. We can also sneak back in with our same spindle guide and basically do like a little seam scrape out from that corner. And that usually cleans it up. At least cleans it up to make it an easier sandable surface. You have to watch because sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes if you get too aggressive, it has a tendency to tear things up a little bit on the inside right there. I'm not worried that it's pointing. I'm not looking for that perfect rolled bead like you would in spindle turning, because that little hump at the top comes right off. But that's sort of my philosophy on that, and that's the beaded foot I like. Why? But I do. Put it that way. The other tool in the arsenal, if you so choose to try one and use one, you could go in here with a scraper. And if any of you are watching Richard Zappin, he is a big fan of the traditional scrapers. It's under, as he talks about, it's under my arm. It's not a giant size angle headed down. It's just a slight angle headed down. This is curved, so I can't get the whole surface or the whole blade engaged at one time. It can be very aggressive. Hopefully I don't show you that, but I can get into that corner and basically just roll it back out. And that gave me a nice clean curve. We can go right up the bowl. As he would demonstrate, you can use it as a shear scraper. Just want to work in small sections with it. Not try, and this is where it will really bite you in the ass. If you try and do this number and come the whole way up, you're almost guaranteed at some point you're going to flip it back over. Because they use it, him and there's another guy on YouTube that's a big fan of using them. They use it at a much lower angle. I'm more up at about 45 degrees. But it will give you a very pristine kind of a surface on most woods. Even pond. Actually, I've done it. I've even done it with pond, and it will actually give you a very clean surface on pond. So that's basically our outside shape done. And you see, if we had bark on here, you can see right here, it still fuzzes up that edge because we went up across it. So that's where we want to try and minimize the amount of cuts that we do up across there with bark on it, have a tendency to try and tear it off. So we need to get rid of this big hunky thing in here. I'm actually going to use a parting tool. Get rid of some of it. I have to get rid of it more with a few spindle grabs first. Make it easier. Now this is a parting tool. It's round just like the big flat one. What I'm gonna do, I'm not gonna cut it off, but I made a cone. That cone will easily fit inside the chuck jaws. And since it's sort of a little miniature Morris taper, that's my center point when we go to flip this, eventually flip it back around to sand and do things like that. Now I have an easy place to do it. And it does work very well, at least for me. My little knob, because they hurt on the bottom of this foot. So that's our outside done. And if you were worried about whether the four spur drive holds, it's still sitting on that four spurs, and it hasn't fallen off. So I mean, it does a good job. I mean, it doesn't take a whole lot of wiggling. It is pounded in with a wooden hammer on the corner of my outfit table for my tabletop. So it is pounded in quite hard. Now we can grab a chuck. We'll snap at the end, make sure that it's solidly on there. One of the other professional turners, I'm going to say it was Glenn Lucas, talked about putting the grain up and down with the chuck jaws. It gives you the best grip, the most uniform compression of the wood. And I'm not left-handed, so something to try, put it that way. It does work. Let's switch over to our longer tool list because we'll probably need it. I think we'll leave the cameras right where they're at. I make a little bit more sense. You'll be able to see a lot of people that I see do things. They don't necessarily understand that the tool has to swing no matter what you're doing. So this will make a swing. And you'll be able to see what I'm doing swing wise. I'm going to start with the 5/8 gouge just to make it go a little quicker. Oh, I changed something. Let's slow the speed way down.
Kurt,
Now
don't rush yourself. You got plenty of time, so don't rush yourself.
I'm not rushing. So we're going to bring the speed up. not gonna let me get to where I would like to get to right just yet, because we still have some clumps and lumps in there. I'm basically gonna sort of drill a hole down the middle. It's really close for the 5/8 there. This is a 40-degree gouge as well. I don't pick the gouge up and reposition. I come right back up on the bevel. The flute's closed, but I stay on the bevel the whole way up, move over a little bit, pick up the cut, open the flute, and continue the amp. Pull this side, I'm going to go down probably 1.5 to 2 inches straight in the middle, just so I have a little bit more room to move. I have to be a little careful on the entry because it's still not round. I'm going to stop short of the last cut, leave myself a step. It's a really fun when it's green wood because you can literally fly through this side. You don't have to go slow. You stop short each time. And now we've gotten rid of the middle. I could have, should have switched belts. You won't be able to hear it. The motor sounds like it's going to out of state. But it also made my entry cut, and the cut in general, much easier as it would have been by cut. Now that I'm about 3/4 of an inch or something like that from the outside edge, I'm going to sort of reposition my body a little bit. My right hip is up against the side of the lathe. What I'm doing is looking at left eye on the left side, right eye on the right side. Because once the tool is in there and cutting, I don't need to see what the tool is doing. We know it's cutting. I don't need to see the cutting edge. I need to see the shape. More importantly, what the wall thickness looks like as I go down. But right now we can see it. We used to be able to see it on the cameras as well. Now basically I'm looking through the air gaps at the tool. So then we have to determine how thick, how thin we want to go. We're at about 1/2 inch. To me, that would be a little bit thick for a natural edge myself. And there I will actually go back to my 1/2 inch gouge. Still using the 40-degree grind on that. The 40-degree makes it a little bit easier up on the wings some days. Back in finally about find where it's gonna cut. As I'm doing is moving the handle away as I shading and come out, move over. Make a very nice deliberate cut. Nice and slow. Because now I want a clean cut. And not run into the wall of wood at the bottom. And now we can take, if this was wet wood, when I do these in wet wood, I actually get the calipers out and set them so that they're about somewhere about a 1/16 or so thicker than the material, and I measure them the whole way down. That's my method of being successful on getting them to dry without cracking, at least cracking as much. And now we have the wings done. Now it's just a plain old bowl. There's no real rocket science on the rest of it. I can bring my tool rest in if it makes you feel better. And we'll just continue on straight down. Now, if we want to keep our right side of our gouge sharp, or if we want more clean cut out of that, we can use the left side. And I'm following the same step already made. But we got then we got to do something a little different. Now you can see with exception, it makes it very, very easy because all I'm doing is when you have that, and closing it through, dropping over that way, and doing it one way, you pick up the top and keep on going. Also makes it get in. So that's good for you. So when we get back out, close to the outside edge, then we're going to have to start to put the tip to it so onto the next face again. We still want to look at our profile on the outside. Chances are I probably want to wear crooked. Remember, we only go at the speed that it will allow us to go. You wouldn't have been able to hear it because the noise canceling cancels it out, but it was starting to give me a little bit of a chatter, a little bit of a squeal because I was trying to push it too hard. For relatively even thickness wise, I also left a ridge right there. So at that point, I'm going to come back up here. We know the ridge is back up in here, right about there. We'll come back up. Very light tool presentation. These are back. Pick up that shot. We'll go back down to the center. And then we'll stop and give it a feel and see how we did. We didn't do the world's greatest, but it's a sandable finish. The main thing is there's no torn grain. We don't have any grain that's pulled out or anything like that. So that's, to me, that's the main part. The little humps and lumps we can sand out. And in a piece like this, won't even worry about it because I'm going to have to do something with either leave those wormholes there, which may or may not. The only reason I don't necessarily like leaving some of the round wormholes are not too bad, but like this one here, that's like oblong. That edge, once you sand it, that edge stays sharp. You almost want to go back and do something with it, as far as at least sanding it off or something like that. That's just kind of my opinion of it. From here down, I can stay with my 1/2 inch gouge for quite a ways. Just brought the tool rest in a little bit further. I like using my 1/2 inch gouges better. I'm not a fan of the big heavy gouges. Basically, another rinse and repeat. We're gonna go right back to the thing. We're gonna drill out some more of the filler. We'll take it down and stage it. I was looking at our outside profile for what we're doing on the inside too. But here's really a good place to keep saying I'm going straight, when I really need to be serving. You want to stop and have a feel. We could measure it with calipers too, if you wanted, if you're so minded. When the wood's dry enough, I'm not really that worried about the thickness there. So it feels like I'm getting a little bit thicker as we go down, which is the way to be. If you get thin going down there, then it becomes a bit of a challenge. And this might pick up in the spot. I'm gonna back up. I want to touch that right there. And here's where you get in trouble with the 40-degree gouge. Those people that are such fans of as they would call it, a 40 gouge. Mine are probably swept back more than 40 degrees. I grind out on a Wolverine jig, which if you're interested, I can show you that. But what happens is when I'm on the bevel, you can see there's only about a 1/2 inch space between the tool and the wing. So that's where you can get into a bit of a problem. Still feels okay. It could be refined a little bit, but we can always do that in a bit. So now I'll go back to my 60-degree gouge so that I don't sound totally like a tool junkie, but I kind of am. But here's a place you could use, if you have one, you could use the bottom bowl gouge. I can actually show you what that looks like. So I do have one. Actually, I have two. I do have the big one. This is the big one from Thompson. This is a 3/4 inch bar bowl gouge in the bottom bowl gouge. Bottom bowl gouge, it's really almost a traditional gouge. That's really all it is. It's pretty much straight up and down. The wings are not swept back at all. And I will be cutting from center to the left, not onto the right. If I roll this over like you would your normal gouge, this thing will grab like crazy because it wants to continue to roll it over. This thing is used pretty much flute straight up and down. It can be challenging to pick up cuts. The steps help you again in this place. And it doesn't do a real good job cleaning the tip out of the flute as well. But it does a wonderful job on the bottom. That I will give. You have to be a little bit careful using them because they are very quick about how much material they will take off. But I know I need more out of the bottom, so and I have a foot down there. I certainly wouldn't necessarily say you need to run out and buy one, but they are very expensive. They are expensive, and you really don't use them that much. Especially for the amount of money they're paying. Probably one of the harder things to get used to using it is the mentality that we don't need to swing the handle as much with it, but we do. I mean, we start up here and that handle is gonna come almost the whole way back around to the side to stay on the bevel the whole way through. The hardest part of using them is to come back up here and pick up that little cut. The only reason I stopped there, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't getting carried away. All right. You have to put your handle away so that it picks up the cut up there. So we pick that cut up, and now the handle has to come towards me rather quickly. And it should be able to go right straight through the center. If I leave a little nub in the center, that's fine. I'd rather have the nub sticking up than a divot. Or tear the center part out is the worst case scenario. But that is one thing about them. That is a very, very smooth finish right off the tool. That makes your sanding life a whole lot easier down in there. But like I say, is it worth the $200+ for one tool? Because you have to almost have to buy his handle because it is a 3/4 inch bar. I did not plan on buying that handle from him. I planned on making my own. But nobody has a cullet or one of these insert pieces in a 3/4 inch. So if our shape is not what we want, we can go to a scraper. This one here is a negative rake. Very short top bevel. I couldn't even answer what the bevel was on the bottom. It's really kind of irrelevant, in my opinion. This one is going to get, I don't use it that terribly much. It'll probably take forever. I will make it once I get this one back, I will no longer grind anything on the top of this one. I will just continue to grind the bottom until I get it back to where it's a traditional scraper. I actually have a piece of steel that I'm working on right now to actually make a traditional scraper for the inside. Like I say, once you get past the fear of using them, I'll put it that way, the fear of using it, they really do a nice job. So this is just a matter of, I'm going to clean up some of this stuff because I have some little bumps and lumps in here. I will not be able to come back up to the wings. I'll only be able to do right there is starting to chatter. I'm just trying to make my curve even. Nice little wispy shaving means that it should, keyword should, have given us a very clean surface in there. And it did not, which is not, to me, is not unusual. It likes to, it's not really tearing the end grain, but it's standing it up. So what I do with that is I've used, now I'm feeling with my fingers. I don't need to look in there with my eyes. Use your fingers. Your fingers tell you more than anything else. Run your fingers down. Does it feel like a nice smooth curve? Is there lots of lumps and bumps? That kind of thing. There's a lump way up here. I'm going to go after these couple lumps and bumps. Very gentle. This is not a bulk removing tool. It's just a finishing tool. Our bottom curve is not exactly what I want it to be. This will make the curve for me much easier. Right from center. If I go underneath the center point, come up and lift the handle a little bit, comes right up to the center, and we'll come up around. And then we have to determine whether that is a smooth enough sandable surface for us. If it's not, which it usually, for me, it usually isn't, because right here is torn grain. It's not, I shouldn't say torn grain. It's standing it up right there. Is that sandable? Yeah, probably. But if we would take we could use either the bottom bowl gouge, we could use a traditional gouge, 60-degree one, it's in the chips. I have one, this is actually an old Sorby one. It's the same grind. It's freshly sharpened. It hasn't been used at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back up here where we were at. I can see the line where I scraped. So if I go in and make a nice little 16th of an inch cut, something like that. The only tool pressure is down on the rest. It's going to give me a lot of overhang on the tool, but as long as we're gentle and make sure we stay on the level. Oh no, it's not going to let me, this one's not going to let me go the whole way to the center. The Thompson one will, because it doesn't have flex. Now we've cleaned up our torn grain that we had. Where did I put it? I'll just switch over to the Thompson one. I can bring, a lot of people would say, well, why don't you bring your tool rest in further? But it doesn't really matter because in order for me to be on the bevel, I'm back here on the tool rest. So I have 4.5 inches of tool hanging over. The other thing we could do would be use the heavier gouge. That'll allow us, the 5/8 bar will allow the overhang without an addition. What we want to do is just last a little bit. It may still even shatters a little bit because of the overhang. We just have to be very gentle and leave that little nub in the bottom. And 9 times out of 10, I leave that nub right like it is there. It's probably sticking up a 1/16 of an inch. I also got some beautiful little spiral marks because it was chattering a little bit because the tool's not as sharp as it could be. But they'll stand out pretty easily. But that's pretty much it for the cutting part. Anybody have any questions on that?
Anyone have any questions on the cutting process?
It's a negative rake scraper.
What is it?
A negative rake scraper.
Yes. A negative rake scraper is a double bevel scraper. Let's do this. Let me pick one that will really show the difference. So if I go up on top of my bowl, on this side, the silver one is what they would consider a traditional scraper. They both have a burr on them. The burr is really what does most of the cutting. This one has to be pitched at a negative angle. The angle of contact between this and the wood has to be less than 90 degrees. Not a lot less, but it has to be less. If it comes back to being flat, or really worse, if you would be not paying attention and tilt it upwards a little bit, whatever this bevel angle is how deep it's going to grab and dig in before it releases. And it is violent. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I actually, when I started playing with it, I had a little block of maple, and it was actually end grain to go with it. And I was just playing around with it and seeing what it would do. When I dropped the handle to where it decided that that's no longer what it wanted to do, it shoved it forward, took the little piece out of the 2-inch draws and threw it over my shoulder. Didn't break the tenon, but it yanked it out of the chuck. Where the negative rake, many different configurations, tons of different configurations. This one is ground the same on both sides, to me, which is probably the easier ones to do, because you don't need to, I don't want to set the platform 3 times or 2 times to do the same thing. Whichever side you need it to be, the bevel one is which side you would grind. As you can see, this one is very long on the bottom side because I just grind that until this gets back to where it's short, and then I'll regrind the top, because it really doesn't matter whether the cutting edge is in the center of the tool or not. These are very, very forgiving. They don't grab. Certain woods they like better than others. The harder the wood, the better a scraper will do. Put it that way, especially the negative rake. And they can be in all kinds of shapes and sizes. I have one that looks like a skew, which is an old skew. So it's curved. You don't want one, like I say, I'll pick on Richard Rappin. If you're watching any of his videos or some other people that use a bunch of the traditional scrapers, and they pick up one that says it's a square end scraper, it's generally not square because they are too aggressive. Once again, Amazon steel. That's Amazon steel there, and that big one, that means 8 by 30, same 200. These take a fair amount of work because this has a tang on it. So the tang is ground on the grinder. Same way with this one here. This one's sort of a specialty one for me. This is the one I use to do my recess on the lanterns. Pretty much all I use this one for. I would use it for box making as well, but it will go in. You set this so that it's above center, so that the only point that comes in contact with the wood is this top point. This one actually has it relieved as well. So it actually has a cutting edge the whole way down it. This one can be used on center. And that's all I wanted it for, was to do the recess on these little guys and a lidded box. It's also curved. It's curved from this point there to the right side of it, so that as I go into the bottom of a box or something like that, we don't get 3/4, because it's 3/4 of an inch wide. If that's square and you get 3/4 of an inch going into the end of something, it's very aggressive. It's more than what you can handle, because you won't be ready for it. So that's why they're almost all them guys that are used, like Richard and that Thomas something or other. They're all curved a little bit, so that you don't get a huge amount of contact in one little place. Does that explain what the difference is?
Great explanation.
I mean, some people swear by the negative rake, but as you saw on the inside of this bowl, it doesn't always do what you think it should do.
Right. You ever find sometimes on the bottom of the bowl, especially where you got that transition with the side grain to primarily end grain on that wall transition, that you need to reverse the lathe direction to get a better cut and cut off the opposite wall going against the grain?
Never done that.
No.
I've never done that. It's 60-degree gouges. As far as I'm concerned, they do all right in there. You just have to be a little less aggressive in there. Certainly the bottom bowl gouges work for that. Maybe you have here's the original one I did. This is a 5/8 inch Sorby, and these work really well for the bottom bowl gouge. The bottom bowl gouges want to be a U-shaped flute rather than a V. So it only has a cutting bevel on it less than 1/8 of an inch, but it's pretty much right at 60 degrees. And the very top little corner of that is knocked back, because there again, I'm coming in the same way and going around that corner. These do make it, that's that little transition point from where it's going side grain, some side grain to almost pure end grain. So yeah,
Yeah, they're
that's what
very
I do with
beneficial
them.
for the bottom. Hey, Kurt, there's a question on how you raise the burr on your negative rakes.
Grinder on the
How
negative
you
rate.
rake? Yeah, how you put the burr on your negative rake? There was a question.
It's ground on there for those.
Straight up ground, okay. So
Yeah,
no
it's ground on
burnishing
there.
tool or honer.
No, if I'm in a hurry, these are all sharp. I just sharpened all them today.
Right.
Let me show you on the. Um, let's do something. I'll show you something that there again, Mr. Raffin talked about. So for that, if I was going to finish it right then and there, I would actually sand the inside of that before I flipped it back around. Actually, probably if I was doing it as a non-demonstration, I would have probably already would have sanded the outside before I flipped it around. It would just make it a little easier. But we can play around a little bit with the scrapers.
Hey, real quick, everyone, I got to booger out for a couple minutes here to take care of the insulin shot for the cat. So, Kurt, you carry on, and Scott Tig or Captain Eddie, if you guys could take over emceeing while I'm away. I should be back in time by the time Kurt's finishing up here. If not, you guys could handle those duties while I'm away. I'll be right back.
Okay, let's start with the negative rake. Like I say, this particular one this is actually an old Freud tool. I'd hate to, Well, I can tell you about how old they were. I bought these when I was about 18 or 19 years old. They came as a set. I don't really like it as a skew. For one, it's not quite the quality of steel. I want to be cutting on center with the negative rake. We don't want to be below center with them. So now we've reversed this, and you see where the little, let's go just quickly on that. Let me go back to straight up overhead. So that gave me almost a perfect center point just by that little paper on there. So theoretically, this should run true. I said theoretically. It don't necessarily run perfectly true, but it's true enough for what we're going to do. So the negative rake is going to go in perfectly flat. Once again, it's a curved edge, so I can move the handle all over the place. And I'm only going to contact one little area of the tool. I'm not going to go very far up because that's really where it'll actually be out around at.
Hey, Cap, this is Sue. And I think what the question really was, when you raise the burr on the negative rake, do you do it from the bottom angle or from the top angle?
The bottom.
Okay, thank you.
Because it could be used in either fashion. Well, that would be, this one could be used either going in that direction, or it could be used going in that direction. If you had a purpose for it to be swept in that direction, then you would just take it over to the grinder and grind that burr onto the top. Same way with, that one there is round, so you could use it either way. Whichever side the burr is on, the burr is what you would need up.
All right, well, then I think answers all the questions on how you put the burr on from the top or the bottom. So thank you.
And for the negative rake, I grind them on. For the traditional one, okay, shoot off because I know what I do with that. For the traditional one, it doesn't raise a really big burr. When you get the longer angles on them, it actually raises quite a big burr. But on the traditional style one, you would take the burr off of the top surface. This is just a diamond hone. So I'm going to take that burr away. Now it's perfectly smooth. Now we can go on the underside of it, line up our bevel so closely, and we'll do little circles across here. And we're going to raise just a very, very, very small little like micro burr. And you can feel it. And the camera probably won't pick it up. It leaves a little shiny edge right at the top. That is a very fine burr that actually cuts. It actually cuts, to me, it cuts better than the big heavy burr that you would use for like the negative rake. Because everybody that preaches the negative rake talks about when the burr is gone, they don't cut. And that's true to a point. They don't cut as well. So that cleaned up. Because see there, that negative rake wants to pick up the end grain on the cherry as well. This is not a very good demonstration of that because it's not totally round in there. So if I get it back around, I can go up, and I can say once again, I can go up on its edge, and now I'm literally slicing the wood with it. I'm only going to go in little areas because it's just as easily making little dips and valleys and everything else. That will give you a finish. You a little bit of practice with it and a little bit of patience with it. You could probably start sanding that at least 180, if not 220. If you were taking lots of time to do that, there's a bunch of this stuff up here that's torn. But it's like I say, it's very gentle. It's also not going to like where it's not round. It will make the scrapers bend. The other really good use for the scrapers is any of the resins. You do anything, I shouldn't say any of the resins. I do some stuff with the urethane resins, the Alumilite, Clear Slow, and things like that. They like a sharp edge tool. So if I'm going to use, get a smaller one. I have a couple different ones that I have. So we go down to a smaller size like that in the scraper. This is a negative rake scraper. It's double beveled. That's all it is with the negative rake. It can be a multitude of different designs. Some of it's manufacturers. The one on this side, the silver one, is made by D-Way, has a Boxmaster tool name on it. This has a long top bevel and a shorter nose bevel. He feels that it does a better job. This tool does cut very well, but it's also, I want to call it, a little bit more troublesome because you're going to grind this maybe 1/8 of an inch back here, and all of a sudden you're starting to lose this top sweep on this, and then you got to go back and regrind that, and it's a very, very long angle to grind, so it serves its purpose. But if you're going to use a negative rake scraper or a skew works really well on the resins, or even the higher, more so just the resins. That would be something like that. This will be a handle for a bottle opener. So this has box elder burl that has been dye stabilized, and then this is the Alumilite clear. This is where the scrapers really come into play. This one maybe not quite as much, but the more resin there is, the better these like it. The better results you get on the resin. For a lot of the people that do resin use the carbides tools, and they swear that's the only thing that'll cut them, that cut the resin. But if I was going to cut resin with that, this one has a tiny little bit of a burr on there. This is how I would sharpen, touch up my skew as well. I'll lay it on there, put the bevel down. I'm going to run it across once or twice. Now I have a shiny little silver line. I can go to the other side and do the same thing. And now I have basically a very sharp edge tool. So that right there cuts any of the resin products very, very well. And it's a non-aggressive tool. But that would be another use for the negative rake scrapers.
What is the piece you have in your chuck?
That is a made by Rubber Chucky.
Is that rubber Chucky?
Yes.
Soft cut.
I was trying to think of the name of it. Yeah, that's one of them Rubber Chucky ones. I was given that. That's the only reason I have it. I'd be quite honest with you. Myself, I actually prefer the ones that I've made. I've made some using the resin. This is just a blue piece of blue felt. You make these any size you want. The wonders of doing it with a resin is that it never moves. It's just as true as the day that I put it on there on the chuck and made it true. And you turn it, you turn that. See if the get the tape out of the road a little bit. I don't want to grab a hold of that. So I can show you what the, I'll show you. Come on, there it goes. We did tighten it. So if you're somebody that likes to play around, and there again, if you like to make pens and you want to do pens with the acrylic stuff, once it's round, I wouldn't use a scraper on it before it's round, because it may chip it. But there's our negative rake scraper that I just showed you that we took the burr off of it. If the burr is on it, what happens is the resin sort of wraps around that little burr and it doesn't like to cut as cleanly. But once the burr is gone, and like I say, once or twice across the hone, and now we have I run my finger across and no burr on the bottom, no burr on the top. And if we go into our resin piece, there's something sticking out. I don't want the piece of tape that's on there. There we go. I know what would happen to a piece of tape, other than sticking my finger. So it's very, very forgiving. Gentle touch. Got to be a very gentle because I don't have a handle in it. One. But as you can see, it does a wonderful job on any of the resin products.
Peels
Very,
right
very
off.
and it's very smooth. So that's one of the other things I would use the negative rake scrapers for. But I'll be quite honest with you, I'm leaning more towards, I use the traditional scraper more than anything because I feel that it gives me a better cut than the negative rake does. But I don't have one for the inside of the bowl yet.
Gotta agree.
Somebody asked on the chat, and I second this. We'd like to see your drawers on the underneath your bedway there.
What do you mean my drawers?
Look at y'all wanting to get in his
Cabinet?
drawers. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, my God, you
The-
want to
the
get in my
cabinet?
drawers? Oh, geez.
Oh, they're
Wow,
breaking.
Ain't bought him dinner yet,
now you're really pushing it.
right?
What do you want to see? Well, let me get something out of the road here. Well,
Is that a cabinet you've got under there, or?
yes, ma'am. That is a cabinet. Let me switch scenes so that I
Okay.
don't make you totally dizzy, and I'll move that camera overhead. Let me
Oh, that's
go
good. I got a
to-
6-pack, so I'm good. Take me on a ride.
Oh shit! You got to hit the right button first. There we go.
Did you make this cabinet?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
Brenda's looking for ideas because she's got the same lathe, right, Brenda?
You think
Well,
we get-
maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well.
So I got that looking down about as far as I can get it. Yes, this is a cabinet. I made that. My background really is in woodworking more so than the turning. I've been turning for about 17 years now. But yes, this is a cabinet because if you have this Laguna 1836, when I first got it, I went to Home Depot. I'm like, they have a tool cabinet over there that's just about the right size. And when you start measuring it and you measure between your legs, it's like, man, that's awful close. So I'm like, well, I'll just make my own. So it has the black foam in it. This one's a little disorganized. This is the handle drawer, plus extra tools that haven't been even used yet. Because I have a tendency when I go somewhere, I like the Thompson tools, and if I'm somewhere he is, and I'm gonna need something in the next couple months or whatever, I get it while I'm there. So that's handles. This is kind of like miscellaneous stuff, chuck jaws, some drill bits, things like that. On a good day, it actually can look organized. Like I said, on a good day. Chuck stay in a drawer, the buffing stuff, which will be out of your sight, it's in this little blue tub back here. I have 3 VM 120s and 1 VM 100, and there's an old Nova chuck that never sees the light of day. The very bottom drawer actually has the vacuum. It should have the vacuum pump in there, but it very seldom ever gets it in there. Vacuum chucks. These are aluminum ones. I had a weak moment and bought them, but they are nice. I will give it that.
So how big is the tabletop on the top of that cabinet then? And it goes directly underneath your bedway?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Hmm.
In my case, in my little shop here, I have a concrete wall right in front of me. So the question is, how deep is the cabinet? Well, the drawers, the drawer boxes themselves are like 21 inches deep. Full extension slides. I think they were over travel slides. And the top goes the whole way back to the back, and the top is about 25 inches deep. It goes completely against the wall. So none of my chips, which is kind of a downfall in one aspect, but a blessing in the other aspect, all the chips that I just made tonight are still on this tabletop. So in some aspects, it actually makes it easier to clean up because I don't have to go, I have a pile at my feet and a pile on the table. But it is completely
But no place to
drawers.
store it.
Right. It is completely drawers. So you have the tool drawer. And let me see, I can move it over a little bit. Like I say, I'm a bit of a junkie when it comes to tools. I've been playing around making some of these tools, some of the scrapers. See your bowl gouges, spindle gouges. I do have the set of D-Way beading tools, which are a lot of fun to play with. The tool rests live in a drawer. There's actually our drive center, 4 different tool rests. You have sanding stuff. If anybody wanted to try inertia sanders, you can make your own. They're actually very simple to make, and they don't cost an arm and a leg to make. So sandpaper, all well organized. These are all packs of sandpaper, sheet sandpaper. Hollowing tools, some other miscellaneous stuff. The very bottom drawer is all
What was that,
miscellaneous.
5 drawers?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 drawers on the right and 4 drawers on the left.
Wow.
If those are
Gary
nice-
Hales wants to know if you could send photos to the editor of your cabinet.
Sure.
Great.
Do the inertial sanders heads turn or they are solid?
Yeah, they turn, they spin. They spin. Put this back on, I'll show you how they work. That's kind of a Rudy Lopez design right there. I went down and took a class with him several years ago. He actually gave me one. He said, "No, you can go home and make the rest of them," because he has a whole set of them. So he doesn't pull the sandpaper off. He just uses a different one.
You're gonna need to adjust your camera again.
Camera.
Yeah, I guess I would, because I just about knocked it silly with my head.
We've seen enough of your drawers.
Okay.
Brenda.
Thanks, Gary, for letting me be the one to ask that. Gary's the one that asked it first
It was
in the
easy
chat.
to do.
Okay.
You know, well,
Okay.
Gary set you up. You got to watch
Yeah,
them
he
boys
did.
from Alabama.
I'll fall for it every time.
So, like I say, I have a set of them. So I have 120 through 400, I think it is, one on each end.
Hmm.
They will stand in either forward or reverse. They're kind of different to get a feel for where you need to actually hold to get them to spin. And depending on where it touches as to which direction it will spin, like if it's over here, it's almost spinning with the rotation of the lathe. Whereas on the other side, it's spinning against it. They're not real good for natural edge, though, I can tell you that. The other thing when I sand this stuff like this, it's almost always spun in reverse. Mainly because my dust collection chute is right there and it goes in better. But it's almost easier with the inertia sanders to go in reverse. And you also sand a little bit faster on speed because it takes speed to make them spin.
What speed are you turning at then?
That's about 775 RPMs right there, which is really too fast for sanding for the most part, but the inertia ones allow you to get away with it. Like I say, these are actually pretty easy to make. It is a skateboard bearing inside. Trying to think what size the bolt is. Not 5/8, 5/16 maybe. The bolt's basically about the same size as the hole inside of it. So you drill a hole. These are actually made out of some PVC decking. Drill a hole for the bearing. You got to drill another hole for the head of the bolt. It has two nuts and there's a washer in there. You put a couple little screws around the bearing to hold the bearing in place. Put like a jam nut there, coming through to a top, basically another nut. This is just PVC conduit, electrical conduit. You buy a 10-foot section of that for like $5. It's very cheap. And you can bend it to whatever shape you want. You just take a heat gun. I used a heat gun. I guess you could use a torch too. Heat it up, squeeze it together in between in a vise, in a wood vise or something like that. And then you can bend it to whatever shape you want. Turn these so they're nice and true. It has a piece of foam on it. And that's just foam. I think that's actually even craft store foam. It's the 1/4-inch foam. And then and then get some good quality Velcro for them and stick that fast. Like I say, I don't use them that much. They're a little bit slower. I'm more interested in getting things done a little quicker than what they do. And there are self-closing drawer slides too.
Nice.
They're soft close, I should say.
Well done, Kirk.
Any other questions?
Anybody else got any questions, comments?
Not me. I'm done.
No, great demo though. Very good.
Good job. Good job.